Hello and welcome to Astrology with Zeke. So today I'm going to be going over the solar eclipse that's going to be happening on the 12th of August of 2026. This is going to be the second solar eclipse of this year, and this is the first solar eclipse in the sign of Leo. Um, During this cycle of eclipses, as the nodes are on the Leo Aquarius axis, with the North Node, of course, being in Aquarius. So, of course, that means this eclipse is going to be on the South Node. So, anyways, I'm just going to go over real quick what this eclipse has in store for us on a very general level. I'm going to talk about some of the aspects that are being made that aren't necessarily aspecting the sun and moon itself, because of course a solar eclipse is basically a new moon on steroids. And then lastly, I'll probably go through each rising sign just to give everyone a better idea of how this eclipse is going to affect you. Um, Whatever comes of this, it's probably going to be good for like 6 months. But of course, it could be life-changing. It all depends on what exactly this is doing in your own chart. So do forgive me if I sound like super positive and then it's like really negative for you, and then you go, "Hey, Zeke, what's up?" It's probably doing something bad in your chart. Anyways, so with all of that out of the way, let's just go ahead and dive right in. Okay. So, what I first want to point out, hey, there it is. The Sun and Moon are going to be conjunct at 20 degrees, and also conjunct K2 or the South Node. So the new moon typically represents like the beginning of a new cycle, and the South Node is connected with the removal or decrease of something. So basically, without going too deep into what this particular eclipse means, is there's going to be a new cycle of something being removed. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. Removal isn't always bad. It can be bad, like it could be a removal of security, but on the other hand, it could be a removal of obstacles. So let's just keep that in mind as we keep going. So, what is the Sun in Leo? Well, the Sun in Leo is optimistic. It's very positive. It's all about leadership. It's fixed. It's stubborn. But it's also very jovial. It's the sign of the Solar King, and with the Moon being there, that means on an emotional level, we're going to be congruent with what the Sun's doing. People with Moon and Leo tend to be the kind of person. I know it sounds rather insulting, but they can be like cheerleaders, not in a mean way, but in the sense that they love giving people encouragement if they feel that they deserve it, and they love bringing people up. Um, so that by itself does look rather positive, and if we combine that with the South Node, it kind of means, to my mind, depending on how things go and what exactly it's doing in your own chart, it could be a new beginning that is the removal of all the things I just talked about, or something that gets those barriers out of the way. To kind of get an idea of which one it's going to be, I'll go ahead and look at the aspects that are uh, being made to the sun. There is only one, and thankfully it is a positive aspect. So the sun and moon will be making a trine to Saturn in Aries. It's a separating trine, which means um, the sun and moon are both moving away from an exact trine, so it's going to be somewhat weaker. But since it's a positive aspect, what I would generally say is probably something that you've been working towards, especially if there's been any projects that you've been coming up against roadblocks or frustrations. Those are probably going to be removed for you. Something's certain pieces or a certain circumstance where you were just waiting for the right circumstances, things are going to start falling into place. And it'll become possible for you to actually move forward on something, whether that's a creative project or what have you. So, going back to what exactly is going to be removed based on the South Node, I would say anything that's impeding you, anything that's impeding creative endeavors. So, overall, like that's actually very positive. As always, I do want to add the caveat of always, 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 this depends on what it's doing to your chart, but so far, so good. There's also a couple of other aspects I want to talk about. The first one that I noticed is there is a grand air trine. That's going to be with Venus in Libra, trining Uranus in Gemini, trining Pluto in Aquarius. So this one's a pretty interesting one, as two of those planets are outer planets. So whether or not this grand air trine actually does something to you on a personal level, we'll see. But outer planets tend to be more indicative of what's going on a societal level. So I'll just go through each one, say what they mean, and then we'll just go ahead and combine them together. So with Venus in Libra, it's a domicile as Venus rules Libra, and Libra is a sign that's like it's about fairness, justice. It enjoys aesthetics and beauty, which is why Venus rules it, and it is an air sign. So that's why it tends to be more associated with intellectual ideas rather than necessarily earthly pursuits. Um, and with Venus there, I'd say there's a basically a strong drive for achieving that fairness or some kind of correcting some kind of injustice maybe, or just a creation of beauty within one's own life. This is going to appear as something that's going to be very outside of the box, something that's very strange, or you may be willing to go to great extreme lengths to achieve this. There might be a good deal of new technology being used. As everybody knows, AI is on the rise. So it could have something to do with that. Perhaps, maybe not necessarily the creation of beauty, but perhaps what's going to be in the public eye a lot is how do we approach AI and say fairness and justice? Because I know one thing that's really big, especially in America, would be flock cameras, which is, of course, uses AI. And to be frank, I try to keep my own politics out of this, but to be frank, it's rather Orwellian in nature, and it's being sold as, oh, it's just tracking your license plates, bro. It's no big deal. But there's a lot more questions to it, especially when it comes to who has access to the data and how are the people who are officially supposed to have it, are they using it in the ways that they're supposed to? So this ties right into the Pluto and Aquarius, which has a lot to do with kind of what I'm talking about as Pluto is a planet that's about the abuse and misuse of power. And the sign of Aquarius tends to be concerned with humanity, the collective, the tribe as a whole, and tends to place the good of the many above the few. So I would say there's going to be a lot of brouhaha over how technology, specifically AI, is used, and how it's used, why it's used, and who it's used against. So I think there's going to be a lot of that going on. How exactly that plays out, we'll see, but I think that's going to be a really big focus. As anybody who's been paying attention at all knows that there's been a lot of pushback in local communities against, big AI data centers and all of that. So I think this is going to be a really big issue. Um, Moving on, we do have two kites, which a kite is kind of like a combination of a grand trine with a minor grand trine on top. So first off, the two kites, all of them have to do with the same air trine that I just talked about, the Venus, Uranus, and Pluto. The first one's going to be this Mercury and Jupiter conjunction in Leo. So with Mercury and Jupiter being conjunct, that is an applying conjunction as Mercury moves faster than Jupiter. So this would be more powerful than a separating conjunction. Anyways, um, Mercury in Leo tends to be highly intelligent, highly creative, very good storyteller. They are also quite stubborn, are not very open to changing their opinion as Leo is a fixed sign. And Jupiter expands. That being said, given Leo's typically jovial and optimistic approach, I do think that this is going to be a good sign. So it's not going to be, there's going to be people who are just going to be more willing to call things as they are, and they're not going to be mincing words. On the, I would say on a slightly better note, I don't think it's going to be indicative of being violent or argumentative. But it does represent, people aren't going to be backing down. They're going to be like, no, this is how it is. This is how I see it. And, you can go toss rocks if you disagree with me and just kind of go about their day, which overall I find fairly positive. Um, then the next one, it's going to be this minor grand trine. Now, this only involves the outer planets, and they've been making a rough minor grand trine for some time, so take that as you will. But it has Neptune in Aries right here. So this could be indicative of perhaps things getting spicy on a more global or societal level, as Aries is the sign of the warrior. And it's kind of strange having Neptune there because Neptune's about illusions, dissolves boundaries, includes martyrdom. So this one could include perhaps a lot of people throwing themselves on the sword, so to speak, to get their point across. Kind of going off what I've said about flock cameras. I mean, we have seen a lot of people getting arrested for vandalizing flock cameras, which I won't state my opinions on that here, but I'm sure everyone can figure out what I think about it if they listen to me long enough. And we've seen a lot of pushback from law enforcement and government saying, hey, stop doing that. And whenever you look at the comments of these stories, you see a whole lot of people saying, oh no, he was with me doing whatever. So I think there's going to be a lot, even though a lot of people are going to be, like as I said earlier, making their positions known and not backing down. I do think there are going to be other people who are going to be more willing to go to extremes to get their point across. Whether or not we can say that's an effective use of your energy, we can have that debate later, but that's not exactly why I'm here. I'm just here to tell you what the planets are saying. So I think that'll about do it for that air trine and the minor grand trines. Um, there is one more, excuse me, there is one more minor grand trine uh, that I'll talk about. And I mean, honestly, it kind of goes right hand in hand with what I just talked about. With the previous one, it's here with Uranus and Gemini, Neptune in Aries, and then the Mercury Jupiter conjunction in Leo. Um, yeah, there's probably going to be more polarization, sadly. I don't think there's going to be some great collective revolution where, the common proletariat man rises up against the bourgeoisie. I think there's going to be far more tribalism and people picking sides, so to speak, which is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I don't know. We'll see. So that's just kind of what I'm predicting what this eclipse is gonna bring. So, so far it hasn't been too terrible. This one's going to be very fiery, as obviously there's a lot of fire in the sky, especially since the eclipse itself is happening in a fire sign. I think it's quite possible that some stuff is going to kick off, maybe not in a good way. And I will say there is a pretty big T square that I'm going to go ahead and talk about now, which kind of leads me to believe like why something's going to be uh, kicking off. And that's because the T square is going to be between this Venus and Libra opposing Neptune and Aries, both squaring uh, Mars and Cancer. So Venus and Libra is actually pretty powerful. As I've said, it's domicile. It's in its sign of rulership. Mars, however, is not. Mars does not do well in Cancer. It is what's called in fall, as Cancer is a sign that's ruled by the moon. It's all about, it's the archetypal mother. It's all about emotional, material security, the past. And Mars is, the planet of aggression, of war. What's so secure about war? It's a very dangerous prospect, right? And what we see with people who have Mars and Cancer, they tend to have a great deal of difficulty in healthy expressions of aggression, and they tend to have a lot of trouble in asserting themselves in a dignified manner. When it comes to their energy levels, they tend to be very depleted. For someone with Mars and Cancer, rest tends to be paramount for them. As their energy level comes in waves, it comes and goes, you know. So with this T square, it's like, yeah, with this Venus and Libra, we're going to be very focused on, trying to create something beautiful, something happy or pleasant. But we're going to have a really hard time with actually implementing it, given this Mars in Cancer, as Mars is our get up and go and putting things to action. Um, Perhaps you're just going to be running out of steam. Why that is depends on what it's doing in your chart. Depends on where Mars falls in your chart. Is it going to be because of health issues? Is it going to be because, hey, it's the dog days of summer and you're just going to be exhausted from the heat? Um, I don't know. We also know that the economy is terrible right now, so maybe it'll just be you're physically limited. It can also lead to people being a hell of a lot more grouchy with each other, being far less patient with one another, as whenever Mars and Venus aren't getting along, they're a sign of the lovers. If they're not getting along, that can be indicative of relationship issues and having a great deal of trouble seeing eye to eye. And even worse, I would say this square indicates it's not just having a hard time seeing eye to eye, it's having a hard time about being honest on whether you're having trouble seeing eye to eye. As again, Mars in Cancer has a great deal of trouble with expressing itself in a healthy manner. It tends to be highly passive aggressive, does things very strangely, you know. So this is going to be a weird one. Then we have, this other square with Mars squaring Neptune. Now, Mars does rule Aries, So what this tells me is there's probably going to be a good deal of martyrdom oh, how dare you do this to me, kind of stuff. Like that's going to be greatly heightened. And feelings of being attacked unjustly, but with Neptune being the planet of illusions, there's always the question of, yeah, but is that actually happening? Is that actually real? So this is going to be a big time where we're going to have to take a step back and just take the time to really analyze things as they are, because there's also a very good possibility that you don't know. It's not personal. No, you're not being attacked. You're maybe blowing things out of proportion. That being said, I do think that this is probably going to be a troublesome time within relationships. So sad to say. Um, yeah. So overall, is this a good eclipse? I don't know. It's a very mixed bag, you know? I think what's really being communicated here is what's needed is people to take a step back and look at what is going right in their lives, put in the work, put in the effort, and just don't wait, don't expect immediate results because this kind of eclipse does not speak to a sudden breakthrough of immediate gratification. This speaks to me of a extreme need for patience. Yet at the same time, given how much fire is in the sky, I don't think many are going to have much patience to give. So I do think things are going to get spicy. I think things are going to get pretty interesting in the next few months, which I mean, anybody who's paying attention to what's going on in the globe, you can kind of see it coming, right? You can see it coming with everything going on in Europe. You can see it coming with things going on in America, things heating up with, various wars going on. So, as always, my counsel would be just stay frosty, keep your head down, pay attention to what's truly important within your own lives and focus on that. Don't get caught up in the hubbub of whatever the newest trend to get upset about on social media is, because it's just terrible for your mental health and yeah, it'll just eat you up alive. Anyways, so I think that'll about do it for the general astrology. And next, I'll just go ahead and go through how this is specifically affecting each rising sign. All right, so now I'm going to go through each of the rising signs for this eclipse, how it's affecting each rising sign. Again, I'm going to be using a whole sign. So just because I say this eclipse is going to be happening in, whichever house, doesn't necessarily mean that's the case for your chart using the Placida system. They're two different house systems. Um, that's a bit of trivia, but this is going to be generally true. And if you want more information about what it's doing, this eclipse will be doing to your own chart. Of course, you can go ahead and book my services. With that out of the way, I'll just get started with Aries. So, if your sign is Aries Rising, then this eclipse is going to be happening in your fifth house. So, the fifth house has a lot to do with fun, creativity, um, non-committal relationships, romance, and our relationship with children. The first thing that I am thinking is this could indicate uh, a new beginning in which a period of infertility has ended, and that the south node has to do with removal. And since both the sun and moon are getting along nicely with Saturn, which is all about restriction, and especially Saturn in Aries kind of imposes us, forces us, puts us in situations that require us to be more patient. And given that it's a retrograde, so it's like certain things are under review. certain things may come to light. Given all those, I do think this could be a period in which any obstacles to conceiving a child could be removed. I will say with one caveat, never ever try to conceive a child during an eclipse, ever. Um, it never ends well. Typically ends in miscarriage or some other mishap. So do wait at least a few days after, please, please. Um, anyways, not medical advice, just that's just what medical astrology tends to relate. Um, but what it could also mean too is perhaps you've been suffering from a writer's block if you're in a creative pursuit, or uh, work in the creative sphere. So maybe writer's block is removed. All of a sudden you just feel like you're more able to focus and pour your will and your own soul into work, so to speak, without distraction. It becomes easier. On the not so good side, that T square, the Neptune, Venus, Mars T square. So that Mars is going to be in your fourth house with Venus in the seventh and Neptune in the first. So the fourth home is all about our private lives, our homes, and family, with seventh house being one-on-one committed relationships, especially marriage. And of course, the first house is the self and the body. So I, for you guys, I would definitely say watch out. And if any of you are married or in a long-term committed partnership, um, these issues could come up. Um, quarrels, maybe it could even escalate to a full-on breakup or divorce. Again, I would strongly advise patience and really get to the bottom of a situation before you make any decisions. Because with that square to Neptune, there's a strong possibility that things aren't as they appear. That being said, this one's probably going to be a really mixed bag for you. Sorry to say. Um, but what I would say is on the bright side, you'll probably be feeling a lot more creative. However, I would say that rest is probably going to be pretty important to you during this period. So do take the time for some R&R as needed. But yeah, we'll of course see how it goes as time progresses. Okay, so after Aries, we are going to move on to Taurus Rising. So for all of you Taurus Risings, this eclipse is going to be happening in the fourth house. Fourth house. So fourth house is your home, to private life, family, ancestry, roots, and there's going to be some powerful, powerful new beginning there. That trine to Saturn, that's going to be in the 12th house, which 12th house is institutions, places of isolation, self-undoing behavior. Um, yeah, I would say this is like probably like really great for you guys because it kind of indicates that something or some behavior of yours, or perhaps secret enemies, is 12th house is also secret enemies, those are going to be getting out of the way. Or at least it's something's going to turn on its head in such a way that it's going to serve you. Or perhaps you may feel a need to become a homebody. Not a bad thing, but it's like a self-imposed hermitage, if you will. Perhaps to accomplish some new goal or some new desire. Um, it also tentatively could be a time in which you move house, you know, because again, Saturn's about restriction, but since it's getting along with the sun and the moon, It could be that, you've been feeling like you need a change of scenery when it comes to your home. But like nothing's really happening. We all know the economy's in the gutter, everything's expensive, it keeps getting worse. But perhaps you get a lucky break, and something changes in such a way that it becomes a possibility. So, um, that could be something. Or some other big change within your family. Perhaps you're feeling more emboldened and coming into a leadership role within your own home. Maybe you're a newly parent or you're a newlywed, and so it just places different responsibilities. But because this is positive, I think you'll really be coming into your own, and whatever exactly that looks like for you in your own personal life. Of course, I got to talk about the big T square. For you, the Mars will be in the third house with Venus in the sixth and Neptune in the 12th. What this kind of says to me is there's probably going to be some pretty health issues are probably going to be coming up, or perhaps how you approach your work and how you communicate with your neighbors and with your immediate peers. There could be some kerfuffle about that, some upset. That being said, because they're not in an angular house, it's probably not going to be as big of a deal. But I would watch out for arguments, especially over within your daily routines and how you approach your daily routines. Um, that could be an issue. Also, third house does rule your vehicle. So do check yourself if you are prone to road rage. Um, it might be easier for you to lose your temper on the road. So, just be patient with everybody. Just be cautious. Not everything's about you. Just because some jerk did something on the road doesn't mean necessarily that, they're deliberately trying to screw you over or something. So, anyways, overall, for Taurus risings, I do think this one's probably going to be fairly positive. Mine is probably some small personal stuff on the daily level, but big picture, I think this is going to be a pretty good one. All right, so after Taurus, we have Gemini. So for my Gemini risings, this one is going to be in your third house. And third house is your vehicle, your immediate environment, neighborhood, siblings, how you communicate. It can also have to do with early childhood. And that Saturn will be making a trine, and that's going to be coming from the 11th house. So this is going to be an interesting one for you guys, as 11th house has to do with peers, groups, friends, like kind of social groups you're a part of. Saturn deals with restriction, but given all the aforementioned things going on with this eclipse, it's on the south node, which has to do with removal. It's in a positive aspect with the sun and moon. I do think that there's probably going to be a strong pull for you to perhaps reorganize your friend groups or find new ways in which to better communicate with those around you, perhaps with your siblings or with other friend groups you're with. Maybe it's even connected with work. Um, yeah, so again, I would say that overall that's fairly positive, you know. Perhaps you've been going through a period of being misunderstood or having difficulty getting your point across, and this kind of indicates that there'll probably be some gradual alleviations with miscommunications. Um, that being said, the T square is probably still going to be a bit of a challenge, as that Mars in Cancer, that's going to be in your second house, which is all about money and finances. Venus will be in the fifth, and Neptune's going to be in the 11th, which is kind of interesting because there comes the 11th house themes again. So actually, having Cancer in the second house really isn't bad. And having Mars there means there's like a strong drive to achieve financial security. What is an issue is, well, Cancers tends to be good with money. Libras, not so much, especially Venus and Libra. They tend to be more prone to overspending, especially on fine quality things, you know? They have an appreciation for the finer things. So you may have a good deal of trouble with feeling like you really, really got to save money, but like actually following through on that might be difficult. Because at the same time, I think you're going to have a strong pull to have nicer things around you, do fun things like, go to a freaking art museum or something. I don't know, or especially do something socially that's going to cost, of course, money, as anytime you walk out the door, it seems you spend $100. So that could be an issue during this eclipse. Um, but that's honestly, it's not a terrible thing, given what's going on with the sun and moon itself. That, of course, is going to be the bigger deal. And because it's positive, I think it's going to be, you're going to be all right. So, anyways, I think that'll about do it for Gemini risings. Next up, we're going to do Cancer risings. So, all right. Anyways, so with the Cancer rising, this eclipse is going to be happening in the second house. With that trine to Saturn, that's going to be in the 10th. So this is probably indicative of a new way of making money, honestly. Like that was pretty clear to be. Perhaps a new career, or perhaps you've been having issues within career. Maybe things just haven't been going away. Maybe you missed out on a promotion that you felt like you deserved. Or if you're a creative, you've been pumping out content, but like nothing's really happening for you. I would say this would be a new change in which that's going to change for the better. It's going to be a removal of barriers to that. And I do say a removal of barriers just because, again, all the aspects made to the sun and moon are positive. So that's why I'm fairly comfortable with saying this is going to move in the correct direction. That being said, as I said at the beginning of the video, this is still probably going to be slow moving. You're probably still going to have to be patient, but I do believe you're going to start seeing some forward progress and just a lot of messaging or signs saying, hey, just stick in there, just stick in there, just stick in there. So it will require patience on your part, but I think that patience will be rewarded if you stick with it. That being said, that of course that Mars in Cancer, that's going to be right on the first house, which is rough. Venus in Libra is in the fourth, and Neptune is in the 10th. So I would really watch out for um, expecting immediate gratification. That's just not going to happen. And in fact, if you're expecting it, um, that's going to lead to extreme disappointment, and things are possibly going to fall through for you if you hold on to that expectation because you're just not going to have the energy or the drive to keep on keeping on, so to speak. Um, because the hurt or the heartbreak of not meeting expectations may be too much for you. So again, patience, 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 patience. Um, Again, long term, it's going to be fine. You're going to be all right. Um, and overall, I do like it. It's just we're in a period where it's just not going to happen. immediately. So yeah, keep calm and keep doing what you're doing, and it's gonna pan out. All right, so after Cancer will be Leo, the sign of the hour. So, with a Leo rising, of course, this is going to be happening in your first house. So, this one, for Leos, especially, this is going to be a big one. Um, of course, whether it's good or not for you on an individual level depends on what it's doing with your chart. And that trine to Saturn is going to be in your ninth house, which is all about spirituality, higher learning, could have something to do with legal matters. It also has to do with foreign things, foreign travel, or long distance travel. Um, yeah, for you guys, I would think a move. Perhaps a move is in the offing, or at the very least, things are going to be happening in such a way that you're going to be moving. You could be moving if it's something you're planning, of course. The conditions will be right for you to do so. Um, on another level, there's probably going to be a very serious redefining yourself on a personal level and how you relate to yourself philosophically. This could be a very good time to improve on your learning, to gain new insights spiritually. So, again, I would say this could be a good time for you. You're still going to be required to put in the work as Saturn demands work for us in order to receive his rewards. It could require you to make some adult decisions, but I do believe that it will be rewarded uh, in a very fantastic way should you follow through with patience and deliberation, even though that's going to be hard for everybody. But I would say, especially say for you, since you already have probably more fire than most in your chart. So even though you're really going to be feeling the creative energies of fire at this time, patience is going to be demanded of you. So during this period, I think it's going to be paramount for you to focus on grounding activities um, and being present in your current situation while still putting in the steady work into accomplishing your goals. Again, I long term really like this eclipse, but I do think it's going to be tough in the short term. And especially for Leo risings, that T square, that Mars in Cancer, it's going to be in the 12th house, which is the house of self-undoing behaviors, of hidden enemies. And it's going to be squaring Venus in the third house and squaring Neptune in the ninth. So it could be that certain secrets could be revealed to you that kind of shed a light on certain things. Perhaps Perhaps you're especially going to be feeling attacked when there is no attack coming, or you're going to be finding out real quick in some not so fun ways who your real friends are. Sorry to say. As you know, 12th house has to do with hidden enemies. That could become an issue for you. Um, yeah, so I would again advise focusing on real grounding activities. And in the long term, you should be okay. Okay. So moving on, we're gonna go to Virgo risings. So with Virgo rising, this eclipse is gonna be in your 12th house. So this is interesting because, 12th house transits tend to be difficult. And they tend to be difficult because, you may not understand what's going on. There's something in the background going on. Perhaps it's your own behaviors that's getting in your way, or perhaps there's some enemies, or it could just be a long period of isolation. Added to that, we'll have Saturn, that trine to Saturn. That's going to be in your eighth house, which is the house of sorrows. It's also the house of transformation, of death and rebirth, how you feel about your spouse, debts, and shared finances. Again, this is a positive aspect. So I would say this is probably going to be the beginning of a period of transformation for you. Perhaps you're going to start becoming aware of certain behaviors that you have that aren't so great. You're going to become aware of them, and you're going to be put into a situation where you're required to work on yourself to correct that. Um, or it could also just be a time of intense spiritual activity for you, as the 12th house does have to do with spirits. Um, this one's tough because with most rising signs, I would say that this is positive. I'm hesitant to say that it will be positive for Virgo rising just because of the houses. And even though it's a positive aspect, Saturn always demands things of us in order to receive his benefits. So I would say this period is probably going to demand a lot of you. You're probably going to be put into a number of situations in which you're required to act alone, on your own, and isolated from others. Yet still handle business. So I do believe this is probably going to be a tougher one for you. However, if you do make it out of it alive, I do think you will be better off for it. That being said, it's probably still going to be tough. Sorry to say. We're also going to have that T square with that Mars and Cancer going to be in the 11th house, and Venus and Libra in the second, and Neptune and Aries in the eighth. So again, I would watch out for fights um, with friends, especially fights over money, as both second house and eighth house do have something to do with finances. So I don't know if perhaps you're in like a club or something, or and you're like on the board of directors or something. I would say issues over money would probably be a big thing, a big issue uh, for you. Um, so that's something I would watch out for. Is you may not be in a forgiving mood, and but again, things might not be what as they appear. So just cross your T's, dot your I's before you get into any disagreements or confrontations. Of course, always stand up for yourself, but just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, if that makes sense. So, uh, I think that'll about do it for Virgo risings. We shall move. So, we're going to be moving on to Libra risings. So the solar eclipse is going to be happening in your 11th house, which is all about, our friends, peer groups, what you're known for. It has a lot to do with the results of your career or your work, as, it's the house that's right after the 10th house, which is the house of career. Anyways, and then you got that Saturn will be in the seventh house, which is the house of marriage, one-on-one partnerships. Um, yeah, and given that this is an 11th house placement, trining seventh house. Even if you are in married, I don't think this has much to do with that, unless it's perhaps maybe you were feeling stifled in your marriage, and now you're free of it. I don't know. Maybe you were in the middle of a divorce or something, and then now you can hang out with people. Apart from something like that, uh, I would say this has more to do with you're probably in a position where you're able to work on one-on-one relationships within your existing peer groups, you know. It could also be referring to known enemies in the seventh house. So perhaps um, something with a known enemy that was like really messing with your friend groups. Perhaps it was like super public. That could be um, coming to a head. So, of course, we'll see, and it depends all on what exactly is going on in your own life. Moving on to that T square. Mars is going to be in the
All
10th
right.
house with, of course, Venus in the first and Neptune in the seventh. So, yeah, Mars is all about our drive. With it being in the 10th house, like there might be a really strong focus on career or making something work happen with your work. That being said, since Mars's energy is really depleted in Cancer, I would say this probably has more to do with probably burnout. Um, Given that it's making that square with Venus, which is since it's in the first house, that's about the self, and Venus in Libra has a lot to do with trying to create beauty and harmony. So it's like trying to create beauty and harmony within oneself and one's own personal being. Yet, you got these demands from work that are getting in the way that are pulling you away from it. But at the same time, I would say it's exhausting. Not to mention, since Mars is also squaring Neptune in the seventh house, it has to do with illusions. Perhaps things don't seem as they are. It could also indicate perhaps some martyrdom. Yeah, so to my mind, I would say watch out for burnout. Watch out for perhaps people demanding more of you than you are able to give, you know? So, yeah, I would say this eclipse is probably going to be a pretty mixed bag for you. It's hard for me to say that it's like going to be all sunshine and rainbows, but, um, just be kind to yourself and take rest when you can. All right, so that will do it for a Libra rising. Now we're going to move on to Scorpio. So, for my Scorpio risings, this eclipse is going to be happening in the 10th house, which is all about career. So, since it's in an angular house, this is probably going to be a pretty big one for you guys. So again, since solar eclipse is basically a new moon on steroids, this is going to be a really big new beginning within your career, and it's making that trine is going to the sixth house, the trine to Saturn. And sixth house is all about how we approach our work, So the sixth house and 10th house are kind of related in that way. But sixth house also has to do with like health um, and daily routines. So it's not strictly just about how we approach work. Given that this eclipse is happening on the south node, and the south node is about removal or decrease. I would say perhaps if you've been having any issues in your day-to-day life in relation to work, or perhaps you've been having a lot of trouble with staying on task and being patient, or maybe things haven't been working out for you. Um, this might indicate a time when that's not as big of an issue for you. So overall, I'd say that's a pretty good thing. Maybe something or it could also be that perhaps you're given more responsibilities at work, which is going to force you to kind of rethink how you approach work. So it could be a number of things. But overall, I would say that's positive since, it is making that positive aspect and not a stressful one. Uh, that being said, we still have that T squared to talk about. So we got the Mars in Cancer, that's going to be ninth house. The Venus in Libra is in the 12th, and Neptune, like Saturn, is also in the sixth house. Um, so, ninth house is all about higher learning, spirituality, foreign things. And 12th house is about places of isolation, self-undoing behaviors, hidden enemies. Uh, yeah, I would say this T square is probably going to indicate that you may be feeling like you're getting attacked from all sides. Um, you may feel like people are coming at you for no reason, and it's going to lead to this worldview that where you're just probably going to feel a lot more prickly. And you may not know what to do about it, but again, because of that T square from or that square from Neptune, again, I would caution restraint. Then again, Neptune can also be about dissolving boundaries, so maybe that's why you're getting attacked more. I don't know. Uh, but yeah, I do think that this is probably going to be very related to whatever comes from the solar eclipse in your 10th house. So perhaps if you get more responsibility, that could, maybe encourage jealousy from people who you thought were friends, and maybe they're not so much your friends. So yeah, I would say just watch your back. I mean, I don't think anybody's like gonna be like coming for you, but at the same time, I think there may be a number of petty jealousies that could lead to some issues for you. So be on the lookout for that. Anyways, I think that'll about do it for Scorpio. Just down and dirty, pretty quick. So, anyways, after Scorpio, we have Virgo rising. So, or excuse me, not Virgo, Sagittarius. I'm sorry. All right, Sagittarius. So this eclipse is going to be happening in the ninth house. Which ninth house is foreign things, spirituality, religion, higher learning, long distance travel. And it's going to be making a trine to Saturn in the fifth house, which is about your creativity, fun, non-committal relationships, relationships with children. Honestly, this could be a really good period for you to expand your horizons. It could indicate a cycle of maybe not necessarily long distance travel, but exposing yourself to new, fun, creative ideas, new philosophies, and exploring them, getting to know them. I think that could be a really good and healthy use of this eclipse. If you can afford to travel, then that might be conducive to you exploring new ways of thinking. But I think this would just be a really good time for exploring ideas, especially spiritual, philosophical type stuff. Um, moving on to the T square. The Mars in Cancer, it's not in a great house. It's in the eighth house, which is the house of sorrows, transformation, death, rebirth, how you feel about your spouse. And it's squaring Venus in the 11th and squaring Neptune in the fifth. So, with even though it's a good time for exploration, I would say there's probably going to be uh, probably a transformational event occurring within your life that could include friend groups, peer groups. So If you're prone to depression, I would say watch out because this is probably going to be a hard time. If anything, this could be why it's a good idea for you to get into exploring new ideas. Because if it hasn't already started happening, I would say there's a strong possibility that something not so fun uh, may be happening within the next couple of months. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but as an astrologer, I have a duty to call it as I see it. Um, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen for sure. Of course, what matters the most is what this is doing in your own chart. And if this T square isn't really doing anything to your own chart, then you'll probably be fine. But, I have to put it out there just in case. Um, so yeah, I mean, don't live your life quaking in your boots thinking that, the sky's gonna fall down, but at the same time, don't be surprised if, something not so great happens. So yeah, another really mixed bag. Sorry to say, but as the eighth house is about transformation, it could, so long as you harness the energy correctly, it could lead to something better in the long term. So I suppose there's that to look forward to. Yeah, that'll do it for Sagittarius. So now we're going to move on to Capricorn Rising. So with Capricorn Rising, this eclipse will be happening in the eighth house. So, eighth house is all about death and rebirth, transformation, shared finances. It's also known as the House of Sorrows. However, as it's only making a positive aspect to Saturn in the fourth house in Aries, what I would say is this is probably going to bring out the more positive aspects of the eighth house. Perhaps you've been feeling trapped at home, or perhaps something very trying has been happening within your own family. This is kind of going to bring an energy that enables you to find a way to get past it. Or if you've been suffering financially within your own home, this could indicate a period of time where you're able to really work hard on getting through it. So even though it's probably been a rough time for you, I would say you'll probably be able to find a way to move forward. Let's see, that being said, with that T square, the Mars in Cancer is going to be in your seventh house, with the Venus and Libra in the 10th, and Neptune in the fourth. So, kind of in the same lens as saying this is probably a transformational period for you. I would say this is especially true if you are married, as that Mars is in the seventh house, the house of marriage. It's squaring a planet in the fourth house, which is the home, and then also squaring the Venus, which is the 10th house, which has to do with the public. Um, if this could be as simple as perhaps you've been going through a divorce, you know, and it's a painful experience. Or it could also be that you're considering it, you know? So again, I'm not going to give you any relationship advice, especially if I don't know exactly what's going on. But it could be indicative that a big breakup is going to happen. Is it for the better? Hard to say. But don't be shocked if something like that does happen. Is it initiated by you? Is it initiated by the other person? Again, also hard to say if I don't, have like someone's chart right in front of me. But again, I would not be surprised if a number of Capricorn risings who are in a committed relationship have that relationship end. Um, yeah, so that's a pretty quick one. I figure I'll just go ahead and move forward to the next rising sign, which is Aquarius. All right, so for my Aquarius risings, this eclipse is going to be happening in the seventh house, which is an angular house. So this is probably going to be a big one for you guys. As the seventh house is all about marriage, committed one-on-one partnerships, clients, and known enemies, and it's making a trine to Saturn and Aries in the third house. So, to my mind, this probably speaks more to clients, especially if your job is one that includes having one-on-one clients, like if you're like, say, a lawyer or something like that. This is probably going to be a period where you're going to be very committed to working with people on a one-on-one basis, especially within your neighborhood. So again, that's why I take it to refer to clients because it's going to be with people in your immediate environment. You're probably going to be feeling very committed and handling this kind of stuff, perhaps coming into your own in a way of taking charge of situations like this. So I would say that's actually pretty positive, especially if you're already in that kind of a job where that's what you do anyways. This is probably going to be a pretty good time for you. That being said, here's the but. We got to talk about that T square, the Mars in Cancer squaring Venus and Neptune. So in your case, Mars is probably going to be in your sixth house, which is the house of how we approach work, your critical thinking process, health, daily routines. And since Mars's energy is really depleted in Cancer, and it's squaring Venus and it's squaring Neptune, I would say health issues might be kind of getting in the way. Either that or you may be feeling burnt out. Um, at times, like burnout could be an issue. Or perhaps you may be having trouble getting your point across as, Mars is how we approach work and it's squaring Neptune in the third house, which Neptune has a lot to do with illusions. So people within your neighborhood may be misinterpreting your actions, which of course is really difficult and frustrating. So yeah, I would definitely watch out for yourself. Take care of your health. Do whatever you got to do. To take care of yourself. Get your rest. Get your exercise. Eat right. All the typical health stuff. That we all know we should be doing anyways. Yeah. So I'd say that one's pretty simple and not too terrible, given the placement of the T square. I would just say, take care of yourself and approach things with a cool head. Try not to take things personally. So, yeah, I think that'll about do it for Aquarius risings. So, last but not least, we have our Pisces risings. All right, Pisces. So, this one is going to be happening in your sixth house. So, sixth house is all about daily routines, how we approach work, our critical thinking process. Um, so, with that trine to Saturn, that's going to be in the second house, which is all about finances, how you make money. It describes your relationship with money. So, I would say this eclipse has a lot more to do with how you approach work and how you approach making money for yourself. You're probably going to be feeling a lot more disciplined in that respect because Saturn really doesn't like being in Aries, but since it's making a nice trine to this eclipse and it's kind of in reception in that the sun is exalted in Aries and it's making a positive aspect to the sun, I would say you're probably going to be feeling like taking charge in how you handle work, how you handle your daily routines in your business. You're probably going to be a lot more committed to figuring out your finances on a day-to-day basis. You're going to be like, okay, am I spending too much money here? Am I spending too much money here? Okay, let's put the kibosh on that. So I would say this is probably going to be a pretty good one, not necessarily in like the big grandiose way, but more so in the you're going to be able to really figure out and handle business on the day to day. So that's pretty good. Moving on to that T square though, we got that Mars in Cancer is going to be in your fifth house. It's going to be squaring Venus in the eighth and squaring Neptune in the second. So again, this is going to be especially true if you're in the creative sphere, and that's what you do for work is yeah, you create content, art, whatever. Venus and Neptune are going to be on the second, eighth house axis rather, which has, to my mind, speaks a lot more to finances, especially handling debt. And with Mars in the fifth, it's you're going to have a strong drive towards creating something new. Maybe you're going to be feeling really competitive, a strong competitive drive, but it's probably going to be very difficult for you to handle your finances. Perhaps you've dug yourself in a pretty big hole, and yeah, you're maybe starting to come to realize how bad it is. Um, so in that sense, it could be hard because it could be just like, oh my God, I got all this stuff to get myself out of. You know what I mean? And that's why it's difficult. Um, or it could also just be, even though you're feeling more creative and you want to get a better handle on your finances, perhaps you're in a position where you feel like you have to be too austere, but you still have the want to like maybe spend some money on something really, really nice. Yeah, you're constantly having to tell yourself, hey, you can't do that, you can't do that, which of course is rough and not a fun position to be in. But yeah, I think that this eclipse for you will have a lot to do with your relationship with work, with money, and how you handle debt and finances. And that's always a toughie, especially if you're up to your ears in debt. That's never fun to get out of. But in the end, I do think you're going to be all right. So, that's a positive. Yeah, so I think that'll about do it for Pisces. Anyways, again, if any of you wish to figure out what this eclipse is doing to your own chart, you can go ahead and book my services at astrologywithzeke.com, or you can go ahead and send me an email at astrologywithzeke@gmail.com and we can maybe figure something out. Um, yeah, and I think that's gonna about do it for this one. We'll see you all next time.